Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the lecture hall. We are stepping up to the nurse practitioner podium to tackle advanced pathophysiology, diagnostics, and precise medical management. Today, we are entering a high-stakes cardiovascular and renal crisis that requires absolute diagnostic precision and expert pharmacological titration, hypertensive emergency management. As a provider, your ability to think under pressure will prevent permanent organ damage or death. Make sure you write this down because distinguishing between a pressure urgency and an emergency is a primary milestone on your advanced practice board exams. Today's lesson: hypertensive emergency management. In clinical practice, you will frequently encounter patients presenting with severely elevated blood pressure, characterized by a systolic blood pressure greater than 180 millimeters of mercury or a diastolic blood pressure greater than 120 millimeters of mercury. Your absolute first diagnostic priority as a nurse practitioner is to differentiate between hypertensive urgency and hypertensive emergency. The dividing line between these two states is not a specific number on a blood pressure cuff. It is the presence or absence of acute end organ damage. Hypertensive urgency features severely elevated blood pressure without evidence of acute organ injury, and it is safely managed over 24 to 48 hours using oral antihypertensive medications. Conversely, a hypertensive emergency is a life-threatening crisis where severe blood pressure elevation causes direct, acute, and ongoing damage to vital target organs. This mechanical shear stress injures the endothelial lining of the blood vessels, triggering microvascular ischemia that can manifest as hypertensive encephalopathy, brain swelling, an acute ischemic stroke, acute aortic dissection, acute coronary syndrome, heart attack, acute pulmonary edema, or acute kidney injury. When an emergency is confirmed, the patient requires immediate admission to an intensive care unit for continuous arterial line monitoring and the administration of titratable intravenous medications. However, your primary management goal is not to rapidly plunge the blood pressure back down to a normal baseline of 120/80 within a few minutes. Widespread vascular autoregulation has adapted to the high pressures to protect vital structures. If you lower the pressure too aggressively or too quickly, you will cause a sudden drop in perfusion, resulting in cerebral hypoperfusion and potentially inducing a massive ischemic stroke. Your standard provider guideline is to reduce the mean arterial pressure by no more than 20 to 25% within the very first hour of treatment, followed by a gradual reduction toward a stable target over the next 24 hours. Here is a clinical pearl you should remember. There is a critical, life-saving exception to the slow and steady blood pressure reduction rule, and that is an acute aortic dissection. If a patient presents with an intimal tear in the aorta, the high kinetic energy of every heartbeat will widen the tear, leading to a fatal rupture. In this specific crisis, you must abandon the 25% rule and rapidly lower the patient's systolic blood pressure to a target of 100 to 120 millimeters of mercury and reduce their heart rate to below 60 beats per minute within 20 minutes. Your first-line agent here is a short-acting beta blocker like esmolol, which safely decreases both the heart rate and the shearing force against the aortic wall. Here is another clinical pearl you should remember. Always tailor your choice of intravenous medication to the specific organ system that is failing. If the patient is experiencing a neurological emergency like hypertensive encephalopathy, your gold standard agents are nicardipine, a titratable calcium channel blocker, or labetalol, a combined alpha and beta blocker, because they effectively lower systemic vascular resistance without increasing intracranial pressure or compromising cerebral blood flow. However, if the patient presents with acute pulmonary edema or acute coronary syndrome, an intravenous nitroglycerin or nitroprusside infusion is preferred because venodilation reduces venous return to the heart, immediately lowering the workload on the failing ventricles. Up next, we are going to test your advanced pharmacological decision-making under clinical constraints. Let's move into Section 2 for our board-style quiz. Question 1. A 56-year-old male presents to the emergency department with a blood pressure of 210/130. He is experiencing an excruciating, tearing chest pain that radiates directly between his shoulder blades. Which initial therapeutic goal is most appropriate for this patient? A. Reduce the mean arterial pressure by exactly 25% over the next 4 hours. B. Administer oral medications to lower the blood pressure gradually over 48 hours. C. Rapidly reduce the systolic blood pressure to below 120 millimeters of mercury and the heart rate to below 60 beats per minute within 20 minutes. D. Initiate a slow fluid challenge to maintain renal perfusion before starting any antihypertensive infusions. The correct answer is C. Rapidly reduce the systolic blood pressure to below 120 millimeters of mercury and the heart rate to below 60 beats per minute within 20 minutes. Here is your rationale. Let's discuss the rationale. This patient is exhibiting textbook clinical features of an acute aortic dissection indicated by severe hypertension and tearing chest pain radiating to the back. This is an absolute medical emergency where the standard, gradual 25% blood pressure reduction rule is suspended. Rapidly reducing the blood pressure and heart rate minimizes the mechanical shear stress on the aorta, preventing a catastrophic, fatal aortic rupture. Question 2. While managing a patient in a standard hypertensive emergency with an intravenous nicardipine infusion, the nurse practitioner sets a goal to reduce the mean arterial pressure by no more than 25% in the first hour. What is the primary physiological rationale behind this cautious gradual reduction? A. To prevent the development of profound rebound hypertension. B. To protect the kidneys from developing acute hyperkalemia. C. To avoid precipitating cerebral hypoperfusion and inducing an ischemic stroke. D. To allow the liver adequate time to metabolize the antihypertensive medication. The correct answer is C. To avoid precipitating cerebral hypoperfusion and inducing an ischemic stroke. Here is your rationale. Let's discuss the rationale. Chronic or severe hypertension shifts the brain's autoregulatory curve to a higher threshold to maintain stable blood flow. If the provider lowers the blood pressure too rapidly, the cerebral blood vessels cannot adapt quickly enough, leading to a severe drop in blood flow to the brain, cerebral hypoperfusion, which can cause or worsen an ischemic stroke. Question 3. A patient is admitted to the intensive care unit with hypertensive encephalopathy. During a fundoscopic examination, which physical assessment finding would definitively confirm the diagnosis of acute end organ damage to the central nervous system? A. The presence of a normal crisp optic disc margin. B. Widespread papilledema, characterized by bilateral swelling and blurring of the optic nerve head. C. Mild narrowing of the peripheral retinal venules. D. An absence of retinal vascular changes. The correct answer is B. Widespread papilledema, characterized by bilateral swelling and blurring of the optic nerve head. Here is your rationale. Let's discuss the rationale. Papilledema is a hallmark physical finding in malignant hypertension and hypertensive encephalopathy. It indicates that the extreme systemic blood pressure has overcome cerebral autoregulation, causing microvascular leaking, brain edema, and a significant rise in intracranial pressure that compresses the optic nerve head. This visual finding firmly establishes the diagnosis of a hypertensive emergency. Question 4. The nurse practitioner is considering medications for a patient presenting with an acute hypertensive crisis complicated by an acute kidney injury. Why must the provider use extreme caution if choosing to prescribe sodium nitroprusside for this patient? A. It causes significant fluid retention that worsens peripheral edema. B. It directly blocks the action of loop diuretics in the nephrons. C. It is broken down into toxic metabolites that accumulate in renal failure, risking cyanide and thiocyanate toxicity. D. It can cause an immediate, unpredictable spike in serum calcium levels. The correct answer is C. It is broken down into toxic metabolites that accumulate in renal failure, risking cyanide and thiocyanate toxicity. Here is your rationale. Let's discuss the rationale. Sodium nitroprusside is metabolized in the body into hydrocyanic acid, which the liver converts to thiocyanate. Thiocyanate is cleared exclusively by the kidneys. In a patient with an existing acute kidney injury, this toxic compound cannot be excreted, leading to rapid accumulation and life-threatening toxicity, which manifests as altered mental status, lactic acidosis, and seizures. Question 5. A 32-year-old female is evaluated in the outpatient clinic and found to have a blood pressure of 190/115. She denies a headache, chest pain, shortness of breath, or visual changes. Her laboratory panels, including a basic metabolic panel and urinalysis, are completely normal. How should the provider classify and initially manage this patient? A. Classify as a hypertensive emergency. Admit directly to the intensive care unit for intravenous labetalol titration. B. Classify as hypertensive urgency. Lower the blood pressure gradually over 24 to 48 hours using oral medications and arrange close outpatient follow-up. C. Classify as a normal physiological stress response. Advise the patient to return home and rest without medication. D. Classify as an acute stroke risk. Activate the emergency medical response system for immediate thrombolytic therapy. The correct answer is B. Classify as hypertensive urgency. Lower the blood pressure gradually over 24 to 48 hours using oral medications and arrange close outpatient follow-up. Here is your rationale. Let's discuss the rationale. Because this patient features a severely elevated blood pressure but has absolutely no symptoms or objective laboratory markers indicating acute in-organ damage, she is diagnosed with hypertensive urgency. Aggressive intravenous therapy is completely contraindicated in urgency, as a rapid drop in pressure can cause unnecessary ischemic complications. Safe management utilizes oral medications to bring the numbers down smoothly over 1 to 2 days. Now that we have analyzed our advanced provider rationales, let's look at how a nurse practitioner implements these diagnostic and treatment pathways when an emergency arrives in the department. Let's move into Section 3 for our clinical case study. The scenario: you are the nurse practitioner working on duty in the emergency department. At 2100, a 61-year-old male, Mr. Miller, is brought in by paramedics. He is complaining of a throbbing 10 out of 10 generalized headache, severe nausea, and a sudden onset of blurry, distorted vision. His wife notes that he ran out of his chronic blood pressure medications 3 weeks ago. Your initial physical evaluation reveals that Mr. Miller is disoriented to the current year and is exceptionally restless. You obtain his vital signs. Blood pressure is a staggering 230/140. His heart rate is 94 beats per minute, and his respiratory rate is 20 breaths per minute. You immediately perform a focused fundoscopic exam and note distinct bilateral blurring of the optic disc margins, confirming papilledema. You order an emergent point-of-care serum creatinine, which returns elevated at 2.6 milligrams per deciliter, well above his known baseline of 1.0. You synthesize this clinical data. Mr. Miller is experiencing an acute hypertensive emergency with target organ damage actively occurring in the central nervous system, encephalopathy, and the renal system, acute kidney injury. Key provider actions and analysis. Let's discuss the rationale. As the advanced provider, you must coordinate his care to prevent permanent neurological or renal death while avoiding the trap of overcorrecting his pressures. Calculate his current mean arterial pressure. 140 plus 230 minus 140 over 3 equals 170 millimeters of mercury. Determine your safe initial 1-hour treatment target. A 20% reduction establishes a target mean arterial pressure of approximately 136 millimeters of mercury. This translates to an initial blood pressure goal of roughly 180 over 110. Order the immediate insertion of a radial artery catheter for continuous beat-to-beat arterial line blood pressure monitoring. Select the ideal pharmacological agent. Avoid nitroprusside due to his acute kidney injury and toxic accumulation risk. Select intravenous nicardipine, ordering an initial continuous infusion at 5 milligrams per hour, titrating upward by 2.5 milligrams per hour every 15 minutes until your target pressure is achieved. Order an urgent non-contrast computed tomography scan of the head to completely rule out an acute intracranial hemorrhage or ischemic stroke before expanding therapy. Insert an indwelling urinary catheter to evaluate renal recovery via precise hourly urine output measurements. The result: within 45 minutes of initiating the carefully titrated nicardipine infusion, Mr. Miller's blood pressure smoothly stabilizes at 182 over 112 millimeters of mercury, yielding a mean arterial pressure of 135, meeting your provider target perfectly. His head computed tomography scan returns negative for an acute bleed. Over the next hour, his severe headache diminishes, his disorientation resolves, and his urine output climbs to a healthy 40 milliliters per hour. Because you precisely identified the end organ damage, chose a kidney-safe drug, and respected the physiology of autoregulation, you protected his brain and kidneys from a catastrophic stroke or permanent renal failure. Superb provider-level management. Up next, on the Nurse Learn channel, tomorrow is Friday, which means we will be launching our dedicated board review topic, breaking down high-yield test-taking strategies and prioritization matrices to help you dominate your licensure exams. If today's advanced provider lesson helped clarify how to manage a hypertensive crisis and ace your advanced practice board questions, make sure to like, follow, share, and comment down below with the specific primary or acute care systems you want us to tackle next. For total board readiness, master-level conceptual breakdowns, realistic clinical case simulations, and thousands of practice exam questions designed to help you pass your nurse practitioner board certification exam with absolute confidence on the very first try, visit nurselearn.co right now. To help you manage your advanced educational journey seamlessly, nurselearn.co proudly accepts Afterpay, letting you unlock our complete premium study platform immediately while splitting your tuition into 4 easy interest-free installments. Stay analytical, calculate those mean arterial pressures carefully, and I will see you all in class next time.